And so he says that this rapid um, shift into fashionability that is characteristic of art, the arts in general, during a civilization phase, um, is characterized by, he says, of Alexandria in the year 200 BC, he says, there, as here in our world cities, we find a pursuit of illusions of artistic progress, of personal peculiarity, of the new style, of unsuspected possibilities, theoretical babble, pretentious fashionable artists, weightlifters and cardboard dumbbells, the literary man in the poet's place, the unabashed farce of expressionism, which the art trade has organized as a phase of art history, thinking and feeling and forming as industrial art. And he also says Alexandria too had problem dramatists and box office artists whom it preferred to Sophocles, and painters who invented new tendencies and successfully bluffed their public. So he sees all this going on in his time when he was living, around 1900, thereabouts. He dies in 1936. And so he waves his hand at all modernist art as basically pretentious babble. It's fake. It successfully bluffs its public, and it becomes merely fashionable. But I think he is right about whatever you think about his opinion of modern art. I certainly disagree with it. Modernist art is fantastic. It is a revelation. I think you need somebody with a sensibility like Gebser's or McLuhan's to understand and appreciate what's going on there. I don't think Spengler understood it at all. But I think he is right that the creative power is dwindling, that art during the modernist period, art becomes now a problem that it never was before, and the rapid shifting of styles, they go from expressionism to fauvism to cubism to surrealism to Dadaism. It's crazy. I mean, it's all you have to do is watch Robert Hughes's magnificent series on the shock of the new to see that something has gone wrong in the Western arts here. They're just all over the place. They're dabbling in everything, and it's insanity. And I think he's right about this, that the art is very troublesome during this period, and you can see it exhausting itself. And I think by 1950 or thereabouts, after the abstract expressionists, who are, as far as I'm concerned, art's last gasp, I think it's done. I think art is a done deal. I don't think much of it today anymore. Although I will admit that, as Spengler says in another essay, he says that even though art is exhausted, he does grudgingly, although he doesn't say it in this book, he does grudgingly recognize that we do occasionally come upon isolated examples of personal mastery, but which stand out, however, against the background of overall very poor performance. I think that's what we've got today. We've got a handful of great artists, very few of them, people like Odd Nedrum and Andy Goldsworthy, and the fact that they don't even come to me very, Damien Hirst, but all of these are debatable and controversial artists. And the very fact of them being controversial is itself troublesome. Of course, modernist art from the Impressionists on has always been controversial. It's the shock of the new that Hughes correctly identifies, but it is problematic nonetheless. And I see fewer and fewer great artists of any kind of worth or merit whatsoever practicing as the 20th century has gone on. And I think you can almost say that art today, in 2012, where we're at now, is almost entirely worthless, with just a few exceptions. Most of the creativity has gone into cinema and into the pop arts, into the graphic novel, into rock and roll and the cinema. That's where all the great creative energy is going. And I think it's really left the highbrow world, the highbrow arts. It's a done deal. Then he says, one other characteristic that I want to mention, because we can use this on the morphological model, perhaps as a predictor of what's to come, is that in the 19th century, one of the characteristics of art in the civilization phase is that it has a tendency toward the gigantic. And he says that American skyscrapers are evidence of this, and he says that American skyscrapers and also the Wagnerian drama is, of course, gigantic. You get this ring cycle that's hour after hour after hour in terms of its length. And then in the classical civilizations, with Ramses the Great in ancient Egypt, you get these building of these gigantic monuments. You get the creation of the Memnon Colossi that are created by Akhenaten's father, or it may have been his grandfather. You get the creation of the Colosseum in Rome. So you get all this wonderful gigantism, which is the phase that we're in right now. And since we're not yet at the phase where Rome was at when it built its Colosseum, or where Egypt was at when it built, in the time of Ramses, those huge tombs of Ramses the Great, we're not quite there yet. So I think that we can make the prediction, although it's a little bit frightening to imagine stuff bigger than what we've got now, but we should see things getting more and more gigantic, actually more and more empty and pretentious, but also more and more colossal on a scale that has hitherto never been seen in the history of civilization. I think that's one of the prophecies that we have yet to see fully fulfilled, even though we've already seen gigantism, with engineering marvels like the Hoover Dam and the Golden Gate Bridge and our skyscrapers and so forth, our aqueducts, the LA aqueduct, and we're going to see more. They're going to get bigger. The other thing is, too, that after that phase of gigantism, what will happen, and it begins to set in Rome from about 150 AD down to about the time of Constantine, is a complete lack of creative ability, such that art begins to be a process of copying the old masters. And this is the period where we find all these Roman copies of works like the Laocoon. Art is practiced in its day as simply copying the masters, and those, as Spengler says, those are considered the artists of their time during that phase. We're not there yet. We're still creating things. And he says that, for example, Constantine put on his great triumphal arch, he populated it with sculptures taken from other works. He just pulled them off of other works and put them on there. Ramses the Great also, in some cases, simply appropriated older buildings and scrawled out the names of the previous pharaohs and put his name on them and called them his works of art. So this is a scary phase to me, where creative possibilities become so exhausted that we actually have to start borrowing other works of art and simply splicing them together, works of art from the previous masters, and you just simply splice them together. And I suppose, in a certain respect, we are already entering the age of splicing things together, the rip, mix, burn culture. We're already moving into that, I think, but apparently that will become, according to Spengler, what will be practiced in place of art altogether, which I find rather frightening. So that's Spengler's chapter on the decline of art, and it's the last thing that he has to say about art. In the next chapter, we're almost through here with Volume 1. There's 4 chapters left, I think. The next chapter is on the soul, and then Buddhism, Stoicism, and Socialism, and then nature knowledge. Oh, there's actually only 3 chapters. And at that point, we will have completed, chapter by chapter, a discussion of Decline of the West, Volume 1. And at that point, we may or may not go through Volume 2, depending on popular demand. If people still want me to, I'll go through chapter by chapter Volume 2 as well. And the interesting thing about Volume 2 is that it deals more with pragmatic phenomena such as politics, money, economics, and the decadent culture forms. It concentrates a lot on Rome, on the decline of the Roman Republic and the rise of the Caesars, and the attendant structural phenomena, the obsession with money, the depopulation of the cities, all these neat things that happen that he doesn't discuss in this volume. So I'm willing to go through that if there's a popular demand for it. If not, I'll go ahead and move into Gene Gebser's Ever-Present Origin, which I also want to go through chapter by chapter.